rainy outside, but it's great to see people who want to learn and share. So my talk, what I learned from a major sports brand app. Agenda will be like that. So we will talk about first what is Kotlin, where to start learning Kotlin, and I would like to share my Kotlin, my favorite Kotlin goodies with you. And after that, I would like to share the nice practices and code conventions I had so far in my projects. And after that, we will talk about where to start converting a Java project to Kotlin. Before that, I would like to introduce myself first. So this is my father. He's not an astronaut, but this picture was actually taken at NASA. He bought my first computer when I was 3 years old, and after that my dreams and my journey with computers started. I studied computer engineering, and I was Erasmus student in Sevilla, Spain. I heard some Catalonia. You are from Spain?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it was very productive 6 months. I didn't go to any party. I love driving, and this is my team, GDG Reading. So I am a Google Developer Group organizer since 2013. It has been a long time. It is really great learning and sharing with the community. I am also Women Techmaker ambassador. If you want to learn about Women Techmaker program, I would like to share with you yours. And so currently I organize meetups and DevFest with GDG Reading team. And yeah, I have been starting developing Android applications since 2013. I started with Eclipse and in Java, which was a pain, especially Eclipse part. But now we have Android Studio and we have Kotlin. So 4 years ago, I moved to the UK. Innovation is my company, and I have been contracting for many brands. Like Pink is a loyalty app in Ascot. I worked for British Council, General Electric, FC Barcelona. Actually, by saying major sports brand app, I worked for FC Barcelona Premier League and FFA projects, and I learned a lot of stuff from there. Tonight I will be sharing those know-how and experiences. And I work for Researcher. It is an app for PhD students. Till tomorrow I will be working at Pupil, and on Monday I will be moving on to November. So, how would you describe clean code?
Readable.
Full.
Testable.
Mm-hmm. By the way, I forgot to ask, how many Android developers do we have? Cool. So we have Kotlin developers right here. Backend.
Yeah, so we're using Kotlin mostly kind of in Spring and Spring Boot projects.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, so it will be like an introduction to Kotlin, but it will be okay in the end. So I would describe readable code, clean code, with those words. It needs to be readable. It needs to be intuitive, concise, and short, and less boilerplate code. It should be easy to understand, simple and expressive, and also there should be minimal syntactic noise. And I think Kotlin has all those features. So what is Kotlin? Kotlin is an Android-compatible language, which is null-safe and type-safe and expressive and concise programming language. You can compile Kotlin to Java bytecode and JavaScript as well. This way, we can use Kotlin for Android development, for iOS development, and for desktop development as well. But the big thing here is Kotlin is 100% Java compatible. And today's talk will be specifically about Android side of Kotlin, more than multi-platform. And Kotlin created by JetBrains. Let's talk about JetBrains a little bit. JetBrains is actually a tool company. So all those tools belong to JetBrains. And most of those tools were written in Java. So they wanted to increase the productivity, and they started to look at many different programming languages like Scala and Groovy. And then they ended up creating their own programming language, which is Kotlin. This is a Stack Overflow survey, I think 2019 or 18. Kotlin is the fourth most loved language in Stack Overflow, and at Google I/O this year, Romangi announced that Kotlin is the first class language for Android. So and they mentioned that if you are starting a new Android application, you should definitely go for Kotlin, not Java. So where can we start learning Kotlin? We are really lucky nowadays. There are really great resources. Play.kotlinlang.org is one of them. There are step-by-step explanations. Try.kotlinlang.org, the other one. There are exercises with the solutions. Again, step-by-step really is to follow and get used to it. And this is one of my methods, mimic methods. So when I want to learn something, I just try to mimic it first, so I get used to it. I would definitely suggest Google I/O application and Sunflower applications. You can clone those repositories on your local machine, and you can start to investigate how do they do Kotlin, how they create a fragment or a screen. Yeah, they're available in GitHub. And we have Codelabs. Codelabs.developers.google.com. They just renew all the Codelabs, I think last month. So they're really great Codelabs. So I said Kotlin is really great, and let's see the code. Firstly, there is no semicolon in Kotlin, and this is the end of the presentation. So we have, like I mentioned, I work for FC Barcelona application, so some of the examples will be about players, matches. We have a project class here, player, with two fields. One of them is name and the other one is age. So I have constructor, I have getters, methods, and setter methods. In Kotlin, you can have all those in just one method by using data keywords like that. Because when you have data keywords, it automatically generates getters and setters and toString, hashcode, and equals. So you don't have to worry about getters and setters and all rest of the override methods. And so we have val, which is value, which means read only, and we have var, which is variable, which means mutable. So we said Kotlin is intuitive, and Kotlin beautifying even the ugliest click handlers. Imagine we have a button and we want to take an action. In Java, you have to say button.setOnClickListener, and you have to override onClick method. But in Kotlin, you can just directly use button.setOnClickListener, and you can just take your action. And if you need to use that parameter, you can mention it here, and you can use it here. So when we compare to Java, it is like more readable and more intuitive. We can say Kotlin asks for less ceremony, right? So this is a Java example. In this function, I'm excluding a player. I have a player list, and I want to filter it, and then I want to return that list. In Kotlin, you don't have to worry about that stream or those long operations about filter, or you don't even need to use that collecting. In Kotlin, you can just say, okay, I have a list, which is player. To complete the operation, you need to use a sequence operator. And I want to filter it. I don't want that player. And I want to return a list. So you don't need to worry about many things in Kotlin, because it already handles that part and that part for you. In Kotlin, we have named arguments instead of fluent setters. Imagine we have a toolbar. Toolbar is the bar we have at the top. So I want to set a navigation icon, I want to set title and subtitle. I don't need to use set again and again in Kotlin. I just need toolbar, right? And toolbar dot navigation icon, toolbar dot title and subtitle. So I don't need to repeat set every time. So we have 4 functions here, and as you see, they are overloading, right? Overloading is mainly used to create default arguments. In Kotlin, we can have all those methods in just one function like that, because Kotlin supports default arguments, and the default value is used when the argument is omitted. So imagine I don't send number, then it means that the number is 42, and the same thing for Boolean value as well. If I don't send a parameter for that, then it means false. So I don't need to repeat and overload like I do in Java. We have scope functions in Kotlin. Java doesn't have scope functions. They are really helpful because they give us a clean code and more readable code. So to define the scope function, the Kotlin standard library contains several functions whose purpose is to execute a block of code within the context of an object. So, and when you call such a function on an object within the lambda expression, it forms a temporary scope here, and in this scope you can access the object without calling its name. So we have 5 different scope functions. One of them is run, the other one is null check, $.let. We are going to see examples for that. Dot apply, dot also, dot let for mapping. So we said we have apply scope functions. Imagine we have a list view and I want to handle the every items of the list view. So this is my adapter. In the list, I have player name and match time. So I need to, in Java, I need to repeat holder dot, item view dot, player name dot, text, and then the same thing for match time. But in Kotlin, I can use apply scope function. It will create a temporary scope here, and I don't need to repeat them again and again. I can just access to the object without calling its name. This is my 9th talk. I do the same presentation everywhere. And people mostly ask that, so we should convert to Kotlin because of performance. No, not necessarily. The big thing about Kotlin comparing to Java is null safety. So if you remember the definition of the Kotlin, Kotlin is a null safe language. So when you use Kotlin, you can concisely deal with nullability. Imagine we have a variable which is non-null type as a type. And when I want to set it to null, I will get compilation error. By the way, I need to mention something else. So I said JetBrains is a tool company, right? Android Studio created by JetBrains as well. So they are trying to be developer friendly. So we don't have a question mark here in Kotlin. If you want to make your variable nullable, you need to define your variable with question mark. If you don't have it, then it is not going to even compile because the IDE is trying to be helpful for you and it is kind of warning you. So you need to use either question mark, or you need to, if you use question mark, then it means that your variable is nullable. If you don't use question mark, then you're going to get a compilation error. So IDE kind of wants you to pay extra attention about nullability. And when we go back to scope functions, we have else operator in Kotlin. So this is an example of if null check. So after I start to use Kotlin, I don't really use for loops anymore because we have more powerful operators in Kotlin. I don't really use if null checks that much because we have else operator in Kotlin. So imagine I have a data and I want to check if it is not null, then return data.size. And if my data is null, then return 0. This is how I handle in Java. But in Kotlin, I can do it just with one line, and I can use else operator. Else operator means, so it will be executing the left side if it is not null, and it will be executing the right side if it is null. And I read from somewhere that they see it because of Elvis hair. They wanted to name it. So just to remind the scope functions, we saw an example for apply, and we talked about, now we're going to talk about question mark let and null check. Imagine I have value, and I want to say if my display name is not null, then show my text view and assign it. It means display name here. And if it is null, then make my text view gone. I don't want to see the text view. So this is an example for .let nullable check and run operator. Instead of using like if it is null, then if statement, I think this is more readable, right? So this will be executed if it is not null, and this part will be executed if it is null. The other very good feature of Kotlin is smart cast. So imagine I have a view value, and I want to check if it is a button, then I want to set image alpha. And in Kotlin, we have smart casts. If I check, so if my view is a button, smart cast in progress here. I don't need to cast it again here, and I can just use it. If you remember, I mentioned that there is no, we don't need to use set every time again and again. I can just directly set it to by using view.imageAlpha. Ranges are the other good feature of Kotlin. So I have numbers from 1 to 10, and I want to print even numbers. I said a lot of things, but you cannot actually do all those things with one line in Kotlin by using range operator and filter. This is a really good example. Imagine you have a port object and you want to do all those checks. So we have one statement in Kotlin, which is switch case in Java. If this port is 20, then use this. If this port is 80 or this one, then use HTTP. And if this port is between those two numbers, then it means save or those two numbers. You can even check the type of it in one statement. But it is really useful because in Java, you need to write it again and again. You need to repeat it, or you need to use a for loop. But in Kotlin, it is just you just need to use in keyword and two dots. We have extension functions in Kotlin. Java doesn't have extension functions. We normally in Java we normally create static functions and util classes mostly, but they get like really complicated in time. You can create an extension function in your project, and you can use it wherever you want. So What is an extension function? Extension functions are added to a type without modifying its original. Imagine you want to check some values, and if this value is true, then you want to make it visible, and if this value is false, then you want to make it gone. You can write that function in your extension class, and you can use it everywhere in your project. You can just call it. And it is really easy to use, and it will be very clean code comparing to Java. So parcelize operation is really easy in Kotlin again. Sometimes we need to pass models between activities, and we can do it by doing the project class serializable, or we can use third-party libraries like EventBus or Auto, or we can make it parcelable. But it can get complex in time. This is a Java code. We have a student object. It implements parcelable to pass this student object to other activities. I have only 3 fields. I have the constructor, getters and setters, and the operations for parceling, write to parcel, and the other operations again for parceling. In Kotlin, we have parcelize annotation. When you annotate your project class as parcelize, and when you implement as parcelable, it will be ready to pass between activities. We have also great collections in Kotlin. If you remember, I mentioned that I don't really use for loops anymore in Kotlin because I have powerful operators. So imagine we have a list of students, and I want to filter passing students, and I want to print their full names. So in Java, you need to create a new value to keep the surname, and you need to use for loops. Like here, I need to check if it is passing, and I need to create another value here. But in Kotlin, you can just say, okay, students is my list. I want to filter passing students, and I want to get their map, their full name, and I want to print each of them. This is another good example of Kotlin Java comparison. In Java, when you use hash map, if you want to get the key and value, it is like too much boilerplate code. You need to handle all those things. But in Kotlin, this is how you handle hash map, and this is how you iterate over map. You can directly use key and value. You don't need to define them again. This is a good example of chained operators. So you don't need to use for loops again. Imagine I have a social repo and I want to get a social stream. So when I get the social stream, I want to sort them by date, and I want to check if it is in last 24 hours, and I want the 5 of them. So it is like saying too much things, but in Kotlin you have many powerful collections, so you can handle them by using all those map operator and then sort and then filter. So far I try to show you why Kotlin is great, and under this headline I would like to share the know-how we used and the code conventions we used at FC Barcelona. This is really important. My team lead was always remembering it to me. So always leave the campground cleaner than you found it. We need to care about the newcomers and the new developers. So always try to write readable code, and we should be careful about that. This was the class layout we had. In Kotlin documentation, they suggest to put companion object to the bottom. But you know, in Java, when we want to create our constants and static functions, we always define them at the top. That is why this was our class layout. So we were putting companion object to the top, and then property declarations, and then method declarations. By doing that, we all had the same code convention, so it was really easy to read the code, or when my mate sent me the pull request, it was easy for me to, because I'm already used to. Just to give a small introduction to companion object, this is where we keep our constants and static methods in companion object. Also, we have an annotation here, GVM static. So it is absolutely fine having both Java classes and Kotlin classes in your project. You don't need to convert all the project at once to Kotlin. It is absolutely fine when you have Kotlin and Java classes. And if you want to call this function from your Java class, you can use GVM static annotation, and this method will be visible from a Java class. And also, as another example, if you remember, we have apply scope function, so I don't need to repeat again and again to access to the object. This is a suggestion from I found in Kotlin documentation. Some companies try to sort the methods by their by alphabetically or by their visibility, but instead of doing that, put related stuff together, it will be more easy to read the code. Also, we can use spaces in Kotlin when we write unit tests, which is really good, because I don't think it's really easy to read, but we can use backticks, and when you put your name in backticks, you can use spaces, so it will be easy to read. Also, as another suggestion from my team lead, lambda expressions can get very long. For example, I'm getting results here, and I want to load videos for fixtures. I can extract all those operations in a private method, and I can handle all those operations under this. So I was always getting suggestion like, can you extract that part in a private method with a meaningful name? So it will be easy to read that function and also this function as well. So what is the biggest problem for you in programming? Naming variables. As another suggestion, please use meaningful variable names. It will be really helpful for your teammates. Where can we start converting a Java project to Kotlin? This is where I started. So I started my current contract last year in November, and I didn't know most of the project was in Java. And when I started, it was like I was very disappointed because we used Kotlin in FC Barcelona project. But also Google announced that Kotlin is the first class language. So I created a presentation and I presented it to business people. I tried to convince them. I put code comparisons and I got their support. This is how I started. And this is what I got from my team after 2 months. Because when you use Kotlin, it is definitely means that you're gonna get less null pointer exceptions. And especially in London, it is really hard to find a Java developer for Android. So it is also another good reason to invest in Kotlin. So I got their support and it was really good. Where can we start? So as a good place can be a very small portion of existing Java code. Like as an option one, a class that you are going to refactor anyway. Or if you want to, if you are looking for a more conservative way, so not touching any production code, you can start with unit tests. So you created your branch, and the other problem is, so we have a really helpful tool in Android Studio, convert from Java to Kotlin, but when we do it, it completely deletes Java code and it creates a new Kotlin file, which means you are losing the history. And some companies want to keep the history, like in my company, they said, please don't do that, you need to keep history. So this is a small trick. I heard that also there is a plugin for Android Studio. So when you rename your Java file as with KT extension, you're going to commit this as a first step. And then after that commit, you will rename your Kotlin file back to Java, and you are going to use Kotlin Android Studio tool. I will make a quick demo in a bit. And then after your actual conversation, you can commit everything. By doing that, you are going to keep the history. So yeah, we said we can convert by using manual code and then convert Java to Kotlin, or there's a shortcut, Command or Control Shift A. There's always human tweaks needed because as you will need to think about nullability because the converter will make the assumption that the variable can be null unless you annotate it with Java's not null annotation. And this is another example for human tweaks. Imagine we are calculating square here. This is my Java code. When I use the tool, it will convert like that. So it is removing the comma and then putting the return value here. But if you have only one line in your statement, you can just remove the return part and curly braces as well. You can just use it like that. Bottleneck is a library to reach the components in your layout. If you are using Java, you might need to use bottleneck, and this is how you define all your whatever you have on your screen: toolbar, buttons, image views. But in Kotlin, there is synthetic import, and it is just one line. When you import like that, you can access to any component in your layout, so you don't need to define everything. That is why last 8 months was like deleting the half of the classes. And also you can see the percentage in GitHub. This is the percentage we had like 2-3 months ago. We have Kotlin and Java, and you can share this progress with your business people. As a final suggestion, don't try to implement a new feature and also convert to Kotlin. Your ticket scope should be only convert from Java to Kotlin, and after that you can write another ticket and you can make the refactoring, because it might be buggy. So just convert to Kotlin and then continue with another ticket. So to sum up, Kotlin means more intuitive and lean syntax, and also a readable code. And like I mentioned, it's a good investment. And Kotlin means less boilerplate code, less null pointer exception, and complexity. Developer-friendly language. So let's make a quick demo. So I have a project class here. It has 7 fields. I have my constructor and getters. And let's convert this to Kotlin. It says there will be some changes. And this. And when I use my data keyword, it will handle all the getters and setters, override to string methods and hash code and equals methods. So I don't have to worry about all those rest of it. Yeah, I think that's it.
Awesome, thank you.
Questions? If you have.
What was the main pushback, or did you have any pushback when you wanted to move to Kotlin from Java from the business, or did they not really care?
So in my type, our users are in the company, so we don't release it on Google Play Store. They take the app works with a device. They take the device and everything, and they go to London, anywhere in London, and so the app captures flat. And imagine the user goes to somewhere in London, and they have a crash on the app. So it means that that day is over. Because he needs to inform us about the crash, he's not able to use the app. And I mentioned that it is definitely a good investment because users are in company and they won't get null pointer exceptions anymore. I mean, it is not like you have to be careful to use nullables. And so this is how I convinced them. And I mean, I can't say there is nothing comparing to Java. Like, I really had a lot of advantages, but no disadvantage, I can definitely say.
We've just reached a bit of a milestone at Crunch, actually, because we had a little bit of pushback.
But from backend side?
Well, the developers were mostly up for it, but it was more kind of like the senior leadership team kind of a little bit concerned about introducing something new into our ecosystem, and you know, whether we had enough skills in-house at the beginning to support what we were building, and things like that. And even to the point where some of the services that we're writing right now, some of the new ones, the decision was made that we wouldn't use Kotlin for any of those. But today, I literally have just been through that process that you've just done, because I think that now they've kind of got over the hump a little bit, and they're a little bit more relaxed about it, and they're seemingly more happy to kind of introduce Kotlin into just like certain areas like DTOs and kind of entities and things like that, where it kind of like these huge savings in terms of lines of code. And that seems to be kind of where the happy medium is for Crunch at the minute. They're not overly keen on just like wholesale kind of conversions of Java services to Kotlin services, which kind of makes sense. But they're okay to say, look, you know, just use it where it makes most sense. And like you say, I think that's one of the biggest benefits of Kotlin. It's so interoperable. It makes a big difference. Gives you a lot of choice.
Yeah. Also, it is a modern language. Like people say, oh, it looks like Python, Scala, and Kotlin. They're all going the same way, like the modern language. Yeah. And yesterday it was a bit emotional for me because people only remember that part, the part I converted to Kotlin, and they both. As I'm contractor, I have always been contractor in the UK. You know, they don't. Some companies, they just give you the work, and you're supposed to work as a contractor. And I get used to it. And yesterday they were like, they came with presents and other stuff. I was like, I don't expect that. I'm so surprised. And I saw many people mention that thank you for the Kotlin work.
So if you could only take one thing out of all of those cool things that Kotlin gives us, if you could take one of them and you had to leave the rest, which one would you take?
Oh, that's hard. I think extension functions are really helpful. So easy to use. I don't want to repeat again and again. I just want to write once and then use from everywhere. And Java doesn't have it.
So they're my favourite thing. Say, being a Scala dev, which is obviously JVM-ish.
Yeah.
When I found extension functions, it was like blew my mind. It was like, it's
Exactly.
like the best thing ever. It's like why do we not have these things?
So on your projects, have you always worked on projects where there's been like an Android app and a companion iOS app, or so did you have like a team of like Kotlin Android devs and like Swift iOS devs and things like that, or did you do something like multi-platform stuff, or has it just been kind of Android?
Yeah, so far I think it was Android. For example, in Barcelona we had of course iOS team as well, but in my current contract we only had Android team. But yeah, I really want to go for the multi-platform as well. They're really great code labs. I feel like I need to learn about that part as well.
Yeah, because I guess it must be an interesting choice on mobile these days for organisations where they know they want an iOS and an Android app. It's kind of like, do you go React Native, do you go Flutter, do you go Kotlin multi-platform, and some iOS and some kind of Android? There's kind of lots of choice out there.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it is inevitable. I have a friend, he works for one of the big bank companies, and he's like saying, we always have meetings about how to start converting to Kotlin. They will definitely convert to Kotlin, but they're having meetings last 8 months because the code scope is so big and they're kind of afraid and worried, but they feel like they need to start from somewhere. I know from like many people's, from many friends in London, like many banks and other big companies, they are converting to Kotlin. Especially last year, they started and some of them finished. Really.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening. I hope it was useful.